Alright, welcome back to another TouchDesigner tutorial, and in this one we're gonna build a beat detection. So I'm just gonna quickly present what that means, and one very simple way to visualize that. So what you can see here is the upper line is indicating the hi-hats, though that's not really working that well. I still have to kind of figure that out, how to make that better. So I'm not going to show you how to do that. The middle line is the snare, so it's representing the snare. When the snare hits, it's showing that line. And down here you can see the kick. So these two I'm going to show you. We're going to start with the kick because that's the easiest to detect, and the snare is also rather simple once you have the kick set up. And I'm going to use a base, so you can, like a container, so you can reuse it, yeah, just drop it into your components here and then reuse it anytime with just dragging and dropping. But it's yeah, two things before I start. One being that I'm going to show another video soon where I'm going to implement this. And the other thing is, this is like not completely my concept. This is actually based off a tool, like a component that's already that already comes with TouchDesigner. So if you go into your palette and look in the tools and take the audio analysis comp in here, then you can see these things here, the kick, snare, and the rhythm, which are doing basically what I'm doing. So this is already working as well, and also using thresholds, which I'm also going to use. But I first wanted to understand it myself and make it myself. And secondly, I think actually what I've gotten out of my experiments is working a bit better, at least for my yeah, wherever I use that. It's better. I don't know, your judgment, but like mostly I just wanted to understand what's going on there. So if you go in here, it's quite the mess. There's a lot going on. Also, I mean, it's not a mess, it's just a lot going on, I guess. And also some stuff that I didn't actually want to have in my final outcome. But so you have a lot of ways to set this up here. So anyways, I'm just gonna restart from scratch. I've got this base here, but I'm gonna delete it. I'm just gonna leave these here, but we're gonna start with a base. So a base comp. And before I really dive into it, I'm going to add an in and an out chop here. So we already have those set up, so just in and out all over here, all the way over here. And if we zoom out again, we now have an in and an output, so now we can put the audio file in there. I'm going to not make these cook, we don't need them right now. And yeah, just leave that there. So we have the audio device outside of the base, and also I'm just gonna use a null here, so we see there's something coming out. All right, I mean we can see that here as well, but whatever. All right, so I'm also gonna call this like kick detection or whatever you want to call it, and also put a number after it, so that's a good practice. All right, so if we dive in here now, we can see this in chop here, but yeah, no but we see that. And we have two inputs here, and this input is the input that I just showed you, so the comp input, and the other one is one that we're also going to use. So I'm going to drop another audio file in here and connect it to the second input, and also just gonna leave it at the sample file that we always have. And so if I zoom out and disconnect this, we still have an input there, which is always good. So all our like chops in here aren't gonna display an error. All right. So what we have here now is like 2 channels, so the left and the right channel, and we only want to work with 1 channel. So I'm going to use a math here. That's not a math. A math. And change the combined channels to average, so we just get the average volume of both of these added together. Right, yeah, mixed together, I guess. Alright, and the next step is something that I don't think you need 100%, but it just gives you a bit more control. So put an audio spectrum here, so and change the high frequency boost to 1, and yeah, it's always nice to have just a bit more control of the FFT size and stuff like that. Alright, the next step is using an analyze, and often, like in the beginning when I started using TouchDesigner, this is basically where I stopped. So this is just taking the average, like with the function average being selected. This is really just taking the average of all of these samples. So this is the frequency spectrum of the song, and we have all these different samples, different volumes, and this is just taking the average of all of those and putting them into 1 time slice, which is this. And yeah, as I said in the beginning, I just used that. Now I've used TouchDesigner more, and I want to have a more sophisticated channel to work with. So this is what comes out of that. All right. So next step, what we're gonna do is, like, we've converted this to a time slice, but I'm gonna convert it back to something else using a trail chop. So what the trail chop is doing is kind of recording this value here in a set length of the window. So the window length is now set to 4 seconds, and change that to, like, it's, yeah, as you can see, it's like recording this value here. I'm going to change the window length to 1 for now. I'm going to change it to something else later. But yeah, and as you can already see here, when the kick hits, so like the bass drum hits, you can already see there's these peaks, and those peaks are really what we're gonna be working with. And yeah, this is also the reason why the kicks are like the easiest to detect, because they're usually making the song, when they're like hitting, it's always, like in most cases, the song becomes the loudest at that moment. Alright, so now we have like this value between around 0 point something and 0.1, and that's not very nice. In the end, we're going to have a normalized value between 0 and 1, so there's a bit of way to go there. And what I'm going to do here is use another math, and we're going to change the multiply here to 1000. There's reasons for that. Basically, it's easier to work with a value that is between 0 and 100, and not like 0 and 0.1. Now we're going to do something that might seem counterintuitive, but maybe it makes more sense later, especially when we get to the snare. So I'm going to use a limit here, and actually renormalize this value from like 0 and 100 to, if we just press, like, turn normalize on, we have now like this value between 0 and 1. No, -1 and 1. And like this would still work if we bypass this, but this has its use later on. Alright, anyways, so another thing we're going to do on the limit is change this type here to clamp. So what we want to have is, as you can see, as I just said, we have these peaks here. So we kind of just want to cut this, all of this stuff off, and just use the peaks. So we do that by clamping this. So we're going to change the maximum to the maximum of this, so around 100. And then we're going to change the minimum to what I found for this song is good, but we're gonna change this later. I'm also gonna make a slider for this later, but it's 87. So 87 is around here somewhere, and I guess more like here. And now we really only have these peaks here, as you can see. So you can already maybe get a feel of how the speed detection is working. So alright, so the next step now is like this is still between -1 and 1, and also yeah, so that's basically the first thing. I want to change this again to something else, to a different range. So I want to have this from like -1 and 1 to like 0 and 1. So yeah, so we have this perfectly, or more or less perfectly normalized value here now. Cool. So still another problem that we have here is that all of these hits here are like a different height, or like a different volume, I guess, and a different length as well. So as you can see here, it's very short, it's a bit longer, and yeah, they're just a bit different. So what we can do now for like to do two things. First, to make these evenly long and evenly loud, and also to now convert them back to time slice. We're going to use a trigger chop and change quite a few things there. So first I'm gonna actually just temporarily change this to like not being a time slice. That looks very odd, but that's okay. So first what we're gonna do here is change this trigger threshold to 0.5, and actually I'm going to change the minimum here to like something a bit lower. So if I actually turn this on again, every time this is going over 0.5, which is this threshold here, this is going to be triggered. And yeah, that's pretty perfect, because you can already see this working very well. Now we just like need to change a few things. One thing I'm gonna do is now not actually temporarily change on the time slice here, but temporarily add a another trail here, so we can see nicely what's going on here. So the signal that we get out of it. So it's looking a bit odd and irregular. So what we need to do here is change the attack to 0, and we also don't want to have a peak length. And I also don't want to have a decay length, and I want to have like the sustain level to be at 1. So this is already looking better. And I also don't want to have any release length. I just want to have like the signal being there when it's actually hit. No attack, so no like fading in, and no release, so no like fading out. Just want to have it straight there. We can do fading out and stuff like that with different chops later on. I'm gonna show that in another example, but for this signal I really just want to have it when it hits. And another thing I'm gonna add here is a min sustain length of 0.1. So now you can see this is nice and even. So there's two problems here that you can see. One is not really a problem, the other one is, because it really drove me mad, but then I discovered what the problem was. So if I just like turn this on here, so, or yeah, you can see that here as well. Sometimes it adds these weird wrong kind of hits that are just not, yeah, just not, it's not their place here. You're not welcome here. So what we're doing here is just change the window length to 0.1, and like it's easier to work with 1 because you can now see the peaks and everything. But if you change this to 0.1, you won't have these weird problems in there. And there was just another problem that I saw, but apparently it's working now. So that in quotes and quotes, this like problem is basically just the threshold. So the threshold is, as I already like said, is this minimum value. So we want to be able to control that threshold because in different songs we have differently loud kicks. So I can also like leave this away. So this is basically done now, but exactly like we want to control the threshold. So one thing we also want to control is this multiply. I'm gonna get back to that later. So how do we control this? I'm just using a constant because I don't really I haven't really gotten into like this whole widgets thing and how to add sliders here. If you know how to do that, then do that, or tell me how to do it. So I'm using the new version of TouchDesigner, so maybe this looks a bit different for you, but it doesn't matter. We just need two channels here, one being called fresh for threshold and the other one which is called mult for multiply. And I'm gonna add a select here and just copy paste that, one select fresh and then select mult, and attach this to a math and a null, and copy paste those, and then we have this going on here. Alright, so we wanna like with these sliders be able to control the multiply and the threshold. So the threshold, I'm gonna map that between 20 and 98, which are just like values on the minimum here that make sense to use, I found out. And on the math here, so on the multiply, I'm gonna change the range from 1000 to 10,000 and just drop that on here. Weird. Okay, so that's working. Kind of. Okay, this is very odd, actually. I do not know what's going on here. I see. Okay, anyways, let's continue. So we don't really need this multiply for the kick for now, but we definitely need this threshold. So I'm gonna change the trail just to 1 second. Look here on the limit. If I change the threshold, like if it's so low, you can see like the threshold is kind of this line down there, and if I make this higher, like it's just taking less audio data into account. So it's really just taking the highest peaks into account. So the lower you make this, the more peaks are gonna like be taken into account. So you just kind of have to figure out the perfect value for your song. In this case, it's around something like this. I don't know. And the multiply can just be used to make the whole song a bit louder, because I'm not sure if this actually makes a lot of sense. But yeah, as you can see here, it really changes the limit there. So I've just ignore this for now, but you might want to use this when it comes to the snare, which we're gonna get to now. So anyways, just got a bit lost. This is the whole setup, so for the kick, and it's actually working very well, and I've tried this with different songs. You really just need to change this 2.1 again. You really just need to change the threshold for the kick, so to determine how much data, like audio data, you're gonna get into account. What I'm gonna do now is save this and copy paste this kick detection and just call it snare detection because it's really kind of using the same concept, and just gonna make that not cook. And now if we look in here, it's obviously the same thing. And now I'm gonna add like one little thing here. You could use an audio filter. I've found that a trim chop works very well, because what we kind of just want to do here now is when I play this, so when the snare hits, you can really see this part is the loudest. So we want to just extract that part, and we can do that using a trim or an audio filter. So here I'm going to change both of these to fraction, and then change the upper one to 0.6 and the lower one to like -0.2. So we're just cutting off this part and this part, and then we just get this part. So now if I change this threshold, you can work. You can go work now. You can see this working, and yeah, I really like the way it's working. And I've used this quite a lot recently, and yeah. Yeah, as I said, there's also the hats. It's the same concept as the snares, at least what I've tried so far, but it actually didn't work that well, because the hats are often very different frequencies and often kind of similar to the snares, so it's hard to like kind of detect them in there. I'm gonna try a bit more and maybe share that one day, but for now I think we're good here. I'm going to show you in the next video how to actually put this into use, and I guess you also find many cases where you can use this. Alright, thanks a lot for watching. Hope you liked this tutorial, and I see you on the next one.